Hello and welcome to the Supernatural track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. And today we're talking about comparing all the season finales, and we actually have 16 of them because we have a series finale thrown in there too. So we've got lots to talk about over all those seasons. But first, let's let the panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I am a longtime fan since season 3. Started writing fanfic in 2012. You can find my stories on AO3 under Firesign10, and I'm on Twitter as true_Firesign10.
And Alex.
Hey guys, I'm Alexander Gideon. I'm the author of the Books of the Law series from the Shadow Council archives with Falstaff Books. First book right here, A Web of Crimson, available on Amazon. Second book should be out hopefully sometime this year. Been a fan for a really long time. Started with season 2 back when I was like, God, was like 11, I think, 11 or 12. So I grew up with Supernatural. It's been there, through pretty much my entire life.
You're the kind of person who freaks Jensen out when they say that at a convention panel. He always looks at them like, and your parents were letting you watch it. Why?
I was watching X-Files at like 6, so.
I was watching Dark Shadows as a preschooler. So I got nothing to say here.
Yeah.
Ann?
Hi, I'm Ann Wicker, and I'm a writer and editor. I came late to the Supernatural party, but I completely went down the rabbit hole. And I'm an unabashed Dean girl. I'm the editor of a book about music in North and South Carolina called Making Notes, Music of the Carolinas. And I also helped Ann Moses of Tiger Beat fame write her memoir called Meow, My Life with the Tiger Beat Teen Idols. She was the editor in the late 60s, early 70s. So she hung out with all the Monkees and Bobby Sherman and all those guys. So, and I continue to edit books for people and dabble in my own writing. And we'll see if one day I don't have a book out of, some kind of a sci-fi mystery thing. So.
And I'm Gail Z. and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, near future post-apocalyptic, and more. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. All of my modern stuff are stories that Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. Like Ann, I came late to the party, walked into the show halfway through season 11, fell in love, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months for season 12. And it's, the rest, as they say, is history. So we have 16 angsty, fraught season finales. Let's start with the first one. This was the one that whether you were watching it live at the time or binge watching from the beginning, you didn't know what to expect. And that's Devil's Trap at the end of season 1. Lots of twists and turns. What do you think? Carole, start in on it.
I loved it. The whole first season, as they're feeling their way through becoming a hunting team, and we as viewers are feeling our way through the world in which they are hunting, and what are they hunting and how are they hunting it. And we've come to this whole climactic couple of episodes where they're finally have reunited with their father. And so John's on the scene, and what does this mean? And demons, we didn't know about demons, and now we've got demons. And of course, that final cataclysmic scene where the Impala is T-boned is scream worthy because you can't help screaming when it happens. And it's like, it was wonderful. It was wonderfully done, wonderfully timed. It was terrific. And it was to me, it seemed like a big screen kind of ending, that I didn't necessarily expect to see on a small screen show. You know, it had that kind of presence and volume with that crash and everything leading up to it. So
Alex?
I love it. I love it. I think it's a terrific finale.
It's funny because that was actually one of the season finales that I saw much later than a lot of the other ones, because I started watching it season 2. So I got, one time of John on screen, and then you don't see him again for forever. He's just mentioned and everything, which honestly almost made it better, just because you had he seemed more like this Superman kind of character, this like urban legend himself, and you've only got to see him one time. So it's kind of cool to see it that way. But like that climax, it was season 1 to me is a great season, but it's definitely not the best season, just because they were getting everything together. They were trying to find the groove. I mean, you can see it when in some of the choices that they made, like Bugs, where they were like, we're never going to do this again. But I thought that it was a really solid end to that series, or to that season. I would have been really mad if I'd have been watching it not knowing whether or not they had picked it up for another season, because that would have been a hell of a thing to end on. Just, oh, they're dead. That's the end of it.
So
Sorry.
much for that.
Supernatural's over. Which, I mean, it kind of makes sense as a way for them, kind of, because I don't know at the time if they knew they were getting a second season or not yet. And so it's a good ending. It's a good one of those, like, well, if we don't get more, it's wrapped up. They died. That sucks. Good guys lost this one, but yeah, I think it's definitely, like, the first 5 seasons are my favorite part of Supernatural. So it's definitely still one of my like more favorite season finales.
Ann?
Well, I liked a lot about this episode, and I think Carole hit it on the head when she talked about how there was a buildup to this with getting John back into the picture, and we're learning about demons. And one of the key things that we learned was when they have Meg trapped at Bobby's, Bobby reminds them that there was a person, there, and she's probably dead at this point, but maybe not. And I think that is something that sets up a lot of stuff that happens throughout the rest of the 15 years. But yeah, that climactic ending scene, I nearly fell off the couch the first time I saw it. I was just, I'd been binge watching the first season, and I was just like stunned.
I agree with Alex, and I can't imagine having watched it in real time and not knowing what was going to happen. I'm terrible about not knowing the end of stories, and I've admitted this before, but as I watched Supernatural, I read ahead in Super Wiki just so I could be prepared. If the boys were going to fight with each other, I needed to know when they were going to get back together again. If somebody was going to die, I needed to know when they were coming back. And I don't know that I really would have survived the tension of watching it in real time. But I thought they did a great job in the first season of bringing the world to life without being heavy-handed with info dumps. It unfolded gradually, and so did the characters. Mm-hmm. And so we were rooting for them in that big fight, and there were so many twists and turns, and John turning out to be possessed, and then Dean, who'd always struggled with being the good son, having to go against him, and Sam, the rebel, deciding not to go against, and we thought they'd won. I mean, battered and bloody, and it wasn't exactly a walk in the park the way they were in the car. And then to get T-boned, that was just kind of brilliant and sadistic at the same time.
Yeah, I did not watch it live either, because I didn't start watching until season 3. So I knew when it happened, that they lived and the show went on, because we were already like 2 years later.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that happened. So it still had that full shock value of out of the blue, the glass and metal shrieking and flying and all of that. And they're already, as you said, already bloodied from that fight. And now, it's worse and everything. Dean was already on the brink of death, so it was I thought extremely, extremely effective and a good launching pad then for season 2.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Many years later, Jensen shared a picture from the back lot with a mangled version of the Impala that had, survived from that first shooting. And man, it was a mess. So, yeah. So season 1 left us on a cliffhanger. And then we get season 2, just when you think it can't get any worse. And that's a 2-parter. So where are we with All Hell Breaks Loose? Ann?
Well, I really, really like both parts of it. And it sets up so much for the whole next season. But it also really cements the build up from season 1 and season 2 of Sam and Dean's relationship. And, Jensen's scene where he's talking to Sam dead on the bed is just, it's an amazing piece of acting. And but it also explained a lot more. I mean, the whole season explained a lot more about the yellow-eyed demon and how they came to be hunters in the first place. And I just think that the 2-part thing really explored so much about their relationship, and that Dean makes this deal, just like his dad did, because Sam is the most important person in the world to him. And it was so well done. And then but then with the demons that are loosed on the world, sets him up to continue to have a job, killing the bad things. So anyway, I really think both parts were really good. Aldous Hodge was great as Jake. He's a great actor. And we got to see Ellen again, however briefly. And I liked it a lot. It's one of my favorite finales of all of them.
Carole?
I think one of the things I liked about the 2-parter is it didn't feel like a 2-parter. It felt like a movie.
Yeah.
It flows really well from part 1 into part 2. So you don't really think about, we had this break between episodes. It just goes right into it. And that flow is really nice. I feel like that first one is kind of much more concentrated on Sam and Dean, whereas the second one is much more like, now it's the world. It's them, and now it's the world. Here we are with the gate and the other characters and the demons coming into play, and John coming back and everything. And it's all, so it's like a very inward kind of thing and then a very outward kind of thing. Beautifully done. The mythology that they create for it's been deepening all along already, but now they get into like the way Colt was involved, and he built the and the gun and the building of the Devil's Trap out of the iron railroad tracks and things like that, they take it from a case by case kind of thing into a much more broad world view of it, in my eyes, where it's like now they see a big picture and not just here I am on my thing and my thing and my thing. Of course, the whole thing with like John and getting to kill the demon and all of that is supremely satisfying, extremely heart touching, with the boys and their dad, and putting this monumental thing that has shadowed their entire lives and closing the door on it. They may have opened to the Hell's Gate, but they closed the door on Azazel.
Yeah.
So it's really, really terrific. Just terrific. I pretty much, spoiler alert, these first 5 seasons, I love every single finale.
Yeah.
There isn't one that doesn't, hit you with the power and the impetus and the, the emotional impact. They're consistently the top 5 in my book.
Mhm. How about you, Alex?
I really liked how season 2 mirrored itself, with starting with John making a deal and ending with Dean making a deal. And it's kind of interesting in that, what would have happened if at the beginning of the season John hadn't have made that deal and Dean hadn't been around? Would Sam still have ended up in the same place? Would he have ended up as the last person in like the competition that Azazel come up with? Would that have changed anything? Would he have, you have that moment where I can't remember the Aldous Hodge's character's name, but when he
Jake.
is
Yeah.
Jake, when he's given the Colt and the first thing he does is point it at Azazel, would Sam have been able to pull the trigger right then and ended the whole thing, and the rest of it wouldn't have happened had Dean not been around, and Sam had to take care of himself in a way that he hadn't, other than being in college. And let's be honest, being in college isn't really taking care of yourself. I just think it's really interesting. And honestly, it's everything that happens in the seasons beyond that. What if Dean had just let Sam die and hadn't made the deal? And how much could have been prevented if Dean hadn't have been selfish in that aspect to make that deal? Because he would have been in, I would presume, heaven at that point. I don't think he's done enough bad things to earn himself a ticket down. And so it's like it's interesting, just how much the choices made in that episode and in that season affected everything that happened in the next like 3.
And can I just throw in real quick that's exactly the kind of thing you will see, if you explore fan fiction at all. Those are the moments that people like, what if, this decision didn't get made, or what if that one, they turned left instead of right, or if they lived instead of died. I mean, it's all those tiny little intersections that then take you in various avenues that we love to write about.
Yeah.
And I think the coherence we see with the finales and the seasons themselves, 1 through 5, is really because that was all under Kripke, and he had the grand master plan for it. So you had a 5-season arc, you had a narrative arc. He knew where it was going season by season, as long as they got renewed. So as long as the writer's strike got in the way there for a while, and they weren't always sure they were going to get renewed, but if they did, he knew where the story was going. So you didn't have some of the pardon me, flailing in the wilderness that we get into in a few of the other seasons, as well as the finales. Or at least,
plus he had Kim Manners was there.
yes.
And there's no denying that Kim had such an effect on everything in those 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely love the emotion in All Hell Breaks Loose. Dean's scene, he told them that he wasn't going to be able to do it over and over again. So they cleared the set and he got it in 2 takes, which is pretty amazing. Of course, at the same time, he was also trying to see how long Jared could hold his breath and make him pass out. And Jared was so moved by it, he was crying, but fortunately on the side that wasn't toward the camera. So I love hearing those things, such a poignant moment, and yet all this other stuff was going on, but they knock it out of the park. And I keep coming back to the comment that happens much later in the series on the episode of the Supernatural Convention, where the one guy says, who wouldn't want to have a brother who would die for you? And I think that is really what we see despite all the other drama between them and Sam going away to college and having them find their way back to each other, when the rubber hits the road, this is how much they care about each other. And that really sets the tone for the whole rest of the show, as well as that little bit of a doubt on whether or not you got back Sammy 100%. And that becomes a bigger and bigger worry as we move forward. So season 3, and we've got no rest for the wicked. Wow, another slam dunk. Carole?
I just love, I love that Lilith vacations as a little girl. And of course, the parallels between her little hiatus in the happy household it just so mirrors that classic Twilight Zone episode where Billy Mooney has all that power and he just sends the dead things off into the cornfield with his mind. And everybody's like, don't think anything bad. Everything's very, very good, you know, because they're terrified. And so that was just like the man, I forget the character actor who plays the grandfather in that, is priceless. He's just one of those character actors that nails everything and just with his own presence makes everything, you know. And then you have the contrast because she's so, of course, angelic looking with the blonde hair and the white dress, and then it's all smeared with blood because the cat scratched her. So I loved all of that. And them trying to, they implement some really great things, like when they have the lawn spray, the holy water lawn spray. That's brilliant.
That was brilliant.
That was brilliant. And once again, the teamwork of the boys with Bobby and everything, trying to get through, and ultimately all for naught. And, you know, we still lose Dean, and we experience Sam's, you know, his grief is just, his horror and his grief is palpable. And we have to deal with, and Katie Cassidy also just really rocked that. She is just so, you know, puppy chow. You know, I don't take orders from kibble and things like that, where she just is so awesomely casually powerful. Is brought up a little short by Sam's not being cowed by her or anything, but she wins in the end in this one because Dean goes bye-bye, and it's horrifying. It's just horrifying for everybody.
Alex?
I think, interestingly, you know, it's a great finale, but in the scheme of the first 5 seasons, it's probably the least memorable overall. Now, though I say that, but it also has the most memorable final like shot. And it's probably one of the most iconic, and you see it again throughout the rest, just that him Dean on those chains, and just that final like cuts to black, and you hear him, you know, scream Sam's name, and it's just like, you know, the whole episode kind of didn't feel like a finale, but that last moment did. Like that last moment kind of like it leaves you with chills when it's over, and you're like, oh man. How are they going to deal with Dean in hell? You know, and you have all that speculation of, you know, is the next season going to be them getting Dean out? You know, of course they're going to get Dean out if there's going to be another season. You know, you can't have a character just be gone in hell and that's it. Especially one of your two main characters.
Adam.
One of your two main characters.
Yes.
We've talked about how I feel about Adam and Michael being in hell.
Yeah.
That long before, but anyway, I digress. Yeah, just I think that overall though, it felt like just another episode. Like it felt like a build up to a finale rather than being the finale itself.
Okay. Ann?
That's interesting that you say that, Alex. It seemed like, I think I have to agree when I think about that it really didn't seem like a finale until you got close to the end. And, but the little girl was so good as an actress portraying that character. And yes, Katie Cassidy was fabulous there at the end. And I think you're right that it did not really feel like a finale until boom, Dean's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that, but maybe that was the intention. Who directed that, Carole?
Those are all who directed it. It was Kripke wrote it. I didn't necessarily write the directors.
Okay.
I think he did direct a lot of them.
Yeah.
If he didn't, it was probably Kim. But I
Right.
think what's happening with this particular one is this is the one they didn't know it was going to be the finale. They had to like hurry up
Right.
and tie
Yeah.
things up because writer's strike. So where they would have had another 4 or 5 episodes to parse through everything, they were like, okay, calling the hellhound. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably, I think what we're feeling is that we didn't get the same buildup that we did the other couple of years. But I think certainly with that in mind, I think they handled it well. And pretty much, I mean, that hellhound attack was I think one of the most brutal things we really had seen so far in terms of, I mean, we saw Dean, so we see Dean after with the hooks and stuff, but up until then, we haven't really seen them sliced and diced.
Mm-hmm.
We get to later on and things, but this is the first one. I mean, when that hellhound is clawing his organs out practically, you know, and it's pretty rough. So I think they went for the maximum bang they could in the limited time they had.
Right.
And those were all practical effects back then. That wasn't CGI. So that's also pretty amazing. I think that one of the things we start to see, and Sam kind of foreshadows this when Dean is kind of horrified toward the end of season 3, where Sam just, instead of hesitating, he just shoots things. He's just done with it. And Dean's rather horrified, and Sam says, well, I have to learn to be more like you because you're not going to be around, are you? I have to get harder and tougher. And I think Dean starts to see that maybe his decision is going to have consequences he didn't foresee. And this is where we start to see something that happens over and over again, which is that when Dean loses Sam, Dean becomes self-destructive. When Sam loses Dean, he burns down the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that just holds through the rest of the season, the rest of the series.
Well, except for that one time when Sam kind of did nothing, but
we all have headcanon theories about that. Yeah, the thing that shall not be named. But so season 4, Lucifer Rising. Now we've got even bigger consequences. Ann?
Well, you know, seeing Sam's really going down the rabbit hole with Ruby and drinking the demon blood and everything. I'm refreshing my memory here. And then this one, Gail, is the one with the tampered with voicemail. That
never got fixed.
Yes. Where Dean's in the green room with Zachariah and leaves the message, and then Zachariah fucks it up. Oh,
That's okay. We're past the first 10 minutes. And it could have been Ruby that did it. It could have been Ruby or the Angels. Yeah, we don't know.
We never know, and it never gets fixed. But then the end, you know, where Castiel finally decides he's on the Winchester side, and I mean completely, and so we get that, and then it always sort of, ever since I've seen it the first time, every time I watch that, I always think about Jared trying to explain to his kids why Uncle Jensen is killing mommy.
Yeah.
So, but getting back to the real story, it's horrifying, and Sam realizing what he's really done. It leaves. It's big. It's really big, and so I just, it may not be one of my favorite finales, but it's right up there.
Okay, Alex?
Honestly, of the first 5 seasons, this is definitely my favorite finale. Might be my favorite finale overall. Just how much happens in this episode, from Sam going off after they're trying to detox him, and going off with Ruby, choosing Ruby over Dean at that point, and having that 2-season arc of let's kill Lilith end in such a way that it did, with her being the final seal that unlocks Lucifer's cage. And just this like downhill, like the end of all of this stuff that Sam has done and has been trying to not be and prevent himself from being, and all of the trying to be as good as he can to end up being the one who let Lucifer out of the cage, which, of course, has its complications all the way into season 9. Even it's still being brought up that is the one that let Lucifer out. It rippled out so much, and it affected so many other characters and characters that we meet down the road. And it was such a probably one of the biggest moments that happened in the series, because everything that came afterwards pretty much started with Lucifer coming out. With Crowley down the road, and with Abaddon and the Knights of Hell and all of that. Had Lucifer never come out, that may never have happened.
Carole?
I think one of the things, I think it's a terrific episode. I love it as a finale. From the very beginning, with all the creepy, nun and minister, the priest who's like kills all the nuns and stuff. It was just, it was so creepy from the get-go. And it goes all the way through. But I think what I really love a lot about it is that we've had a season of dissension between the brothers, demon blood versus don't drink the demon blood, and jealousy of Ruby, and Sam's pulled between the two of them. And yet here at the very, very end, when they realize what the real plan was, they turn to each other. They turn to each other to kill Ruby. It's a great 1-2, between the two of them, with the grab and the knife. And then as the column of light begins, they grab each other's arms and jackets. And so here they are, they've been fighting all this time. This terrible thing is happening. And yet here they turn to each other. And there is our unification again of the brothers having each other's back, being at the very, very end of it all, being together. And that's what's really, really important for us to then be able to go forward and face whatever the evil is going to be now in season 5. We know they're meeting it together. And that's,
And that's one of the things I love, again, about some of that alternate universe in fan fiction, is we get the, what if Dean had backed Sam's play and said, okay, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to back you because you're my brother, and Ruby hadn't been able to get between them. How different would that have been?
Or vice versa. What if Sam had said, okay, I think there's benefit here, but I'm going to go along with you. And then perhaps maybe he finds out that Ruby really is manipulating him, and, all of that. Yeah, it's a great way to go either way.
And then, there's the other whole playbook where Dean goes to hell and Sam says, screw it, I'm flipping all the switches, becomes the boy king, walks in and rescues Dean himself.
The boy king is such a wonderful, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's such a wonderful, huge area that you could say, well, he's just the boy king, but there's such a realm of, Dean is willing, Dean is unwilling, Dean becomes the consort, Dean's not the consort, Sam hates being the boy king, Sam loves being the boy king. There's so many places to go with that, and they're just wonderful.
I just love anytime the boys don't fight. So Sam walking in there as Sam effing Winchester boy king kind of appeals to me on that level.
It's
But we
certainly-
don't get that. We
Yeah.
get, more turmoil. And then we are into season 5 with Swan Song. And what do you think on Swan Song? And I am now coming to realize that thinking we would get through all 16 season finales in one panel was
This is going to be a 3-part panel.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get through, season 5 here, and then we'll have to do this again.
Yeah.
So Swan Song, Ann?
Well, the one thing that I really enjoy about Swan Song is Chuck's narration and
Yeah.
the whole backstory of Baby coming off the production line, and they were never in fact homeless, and that's really that just drew me in, despite my distrust of Chuck even then. But that the whole Baby backstory, I just love that. And then, the Detroit confrontation, after they have all the rings, and I just thought that was a really well done 3-way scene with Pellegrino and Sam and Dean, or Pellegrino as Lucifer. It really stretched Sam. When we see Sam as Lucifer, it's really chilling, and he did a really good job changing, doing that about face. But then the cemetery scene is just that whole conference. That's another conference. This is a finale full of confrontations. And the cemetery scene, just where again Jared just pivots and he's back to being Sam after being so cold and angry and snapping his fingers and destroying Castiel, and we get the wonderful, "Hey, ass butt."
Did you just Molotov my brother?
Yeah, I mean, it's some classic lines there. This is really a great finale, I think, to the season. And of course Kripke has said that, it could have been the end. And I've often wondered if they didn't tack that scene on where Sam is under the streetlight. Maybe did they find out they were going to be renewed and they wanted to set that up, or I don't know. That just felt tacked on to me. But
They could have got 2 versions.
Yeah, they could have. But other than that, I just think that whole finale is fabulous, and I could see, Kripke had the 5-year plan, and he fulfilled it.
Karen?
I love Swan Song. I absolutely love it. It's probably one of my very top favorite finales. It can still bring me to tears. I must have seen it a dozen times, but it will still bring me to tears, between Dean's impassioned, "I'm here, you're not alone," and Sam taking charge, getting his hold on the devil. The whole thing with Baby, and this is, we've had references, of course, to Baby all along, but I think this really solidifies that concept of Baby as home, of Baby as its own character, her own character. Baby is a presence now. It's not just a car, it's a presence, and it's a player. And that whole backstory is what really gives us that. I love the Chuck part because I love an outside point of view. And we don't, in a TV show like this, we don't get that too often, because you've really got to stay with the characters, the main characters. You only have so much time. You can't really take a lot of time away. But getting a little outside POV like that is really fun. And I agree about the tacked on feeling a little bit. You have a moment of, oh, look, there he is. But, and it almost cheapens a little bit what we've seen now transpire and the sacrifice that everybody's made, to say, oh, look, it's only been a day and we see him again. And it's not, I'm okay with the confusion because it's a finale and you wanted to lure us into the next season, but we just saw this tremendous sacrifice, and don't take that away. But that's really the only, to me, the only even remotely weak note. The rest of it is solid and fantastic, and the details, the Lego and everything, every little detail that they have in there is just wonderful.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't like showing Sam at the end there. I think that was probably the worst part of the whole episode. And it really cheapens moments in the first episode of season 6 where Sam's gonna show up. He's there. You're waiting for him that whole episode to show up, and it really kind of cheapens that moment of, where it could have been like, oh my God, Sam's somehow here, when you're like, oh yeah, Sam's here. And it not only did it cheapen the end of a great episode, but it also made a season premiere kind of worse as well. But honestly, I think one of my favorite parts of that entire episode, beyond all of the, the drama and how well it's written, it's just that moment that Chuck disappears. Like that's just the best moment of that whole thing, when you're like, hold up, what? And it just raised so many questions that they just put off answering forever. And you're like, was he like raptured? Was he? And of course, like the first place everyone went to was Chuck's God. And it was like, well, yeah, we know he's God. We know that to be the case now. But it was like, it was one of those fun things to speculate about for so long before they finally like actually revealed it. But also, I think one of those things that I think about, and it's just a logistical thing, is they're in Detroit and Sam has to like chug all that demon blood to be able to take on Lucifer. That was like 6 gallons of liquid. How did he get all that down in like a couple minutes? Like, I always think about that, like, God, like, you could drink a gallon of milk and not be able to get that down. Like, there's no way he should have been able to walk after 6 gallons of that stuff.
Pardon me, Lilith, I can't kill you. I've got to pee.
Yeah.
And we're late to Stull because they had to keep making pit stops.
Yeah, and also I always thought like you had this like moment where he's just like, all right, let's go after he's done it. I'm like, man, that is not the reaction of a man who just drank that much blood. Like,
gurgling.
he was way too okay with having drank all of that. Not even like a like moment of, man, I just took down all this blood. Like, I always just thought that was a funny part of that shouldn't have been funny, but it kind of was.
Yeah, I thought the whole episode was heartbreaking, and it was, like Carole said, good to see the boys turn to each other in the moment of dire need, and finally be back mostly together, although that falls apart pretty quickly. And yeah, I thought it was a perfect capstone for the first 5 seasons, and that's why it ranks usually around number 1 on pretty much all of the lists for essentials. Well, folks, we're going to have to come back to do the rest of the seasons. But before we wrap up tonight, let's go around and let everybody know where they can find you online. Ann?
Well, you can find me on Facebook mostly and just Ann Wicker. And then I have Twitter, it's Ann Wicker with no spaces. And on Instagram, I'm Ann.Wicker2. So I'm regularly on all 3, but mostly I'm on Facebook. So.
Okay, great. Alex?
So I can be found on Facebook. If you just search Alexander G.R. Gideon. Twitter is probably the best place to interact with me at. I'm at Alexander Gideon. You can take a look at my website, alexandergideon.net. It's going to have all of my books on there, all of my events, a little bit about me. You can also read my blog, readasthouwill.com. It's questionably helpful if you're a new writer. And I have a few videos up on TikTok at Alex Gideon Author.
Cool. Carole?
I'm on Twitter as true_firesign10. All my fiction is found on AO3 under firesign10. Mind the tags. And here. Now I'm here.
I'm pretty findable at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. All my social media are variations of those names. So if you spell them right, you'll find me. And of course, I am here on Continual, as well as the Supernatural TFWNC group. Folks, thank you so much for coming out. It's been a lot of fun talking about the first 5 finales. And we'll pick up the conversation later. But thank you so much. And thank all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more Supernatural here on Continual. So we'll see you online.